welcome to Aleph Zoo, a new video webcast here on Google Hangouts that talks about IT management in a modern IT world. My name is Aleph Obaile. I'm a solution marketing manager at BMC. And with me today, I have Anthony Orr.
Yay!
He's an ITIL author, and he's also a director in BMC's CTO office. Welcome, Anthony.
Wow, hand claps and everything, man. I feel special now.
You are special.
Today we're going to
Today we're going to talk about ITIL's role in our world, and I'm going to see if I can challenge Anthony a little bit about its purpose and where to go. Because
Bring it on.
One thing that I worry about is if you go to a manufacturing plant, the guys on the assembly line know all the 57 steps that you need to take to create a car door. If you go to McDonald's, a teenage kid can run on the food assembly line with his left hand and know every single step in the order. And if you go to a hospital, nurses and doctors know exactly how to keep a person alive depending on what trauma code they're in. Mm-hmm. But in these industries, for example, no one really talks or understands the underlying process streams. For example, if you go to an assembly line, a kid on the building cars wouldn't know what Sigma 6 was if it sat in his lap and wrote it out. Mm-hmm. But in our industry, in ITSM, we have this incestuous relationship with ITIL. Everybody's certified, everybody has t-shirts about it, everybody brags about it, but we don't always follow up. So Anthony, my question to you is, what's the deal with ITIL? Why is it so good? Why should we care?
Okay, let's talk about those examples you use, like the person in the warehouse doing a certain thing in order to produce something, and other examples that you did. Those things become what we call prescriptive behavior, or they follow a particular process. And sometimes when they follow in that particular process, things happen. So that they actually start managing those things related to what the organization wants them to do from an open or closed loop perspective. Now, how did we get there? How did they get to that point that those individual contributors, or what we call those knowledge workers, are doing the right things? Just like when you think about the hospital scenario you gave, and you say, well, nurses, they know what to do. They sort of have prescribed behavior as relates to things that happen in their environment. First, one of the things we say about ITIL is non-prescriptive. So it doesn't prescribe a particular behavior within an organization for delivery and support of services. But what it does, it gives you a lot of insight into what we call the best practices for doing things. And what do we really mean by that? Sometimes at the end of the day, people sometimes misinterpret that a best practices is that's the way you do it, or the prescribed behavior. Not always necessary. It could be, for example, I say, Alf, if you're cooking, make sure you have frying pans, because that's when you're going to fry things. Make sure you have pots. That's when you're going to boil things. Make sure you have colanders and spoons and forks and knives and all these type of things, because they have certain capabilities to help you with what you're trying to cook. Now, what you're trying to cook, you may try to cook chicken one day, and you may try to cook some spaghetti another day, and so really those are different outcomes that you're trying to get to with the capabilities and the resources that you have in the kitchen. Now, ITIL is the same way. It gives you all these methodologies and things like that for the outcomes that you're trying to get to. That's why when we talk about ITIL, we talk about ITIL as a practice, really, instead of just as an outcome for customers. Sometimes you may even hear in the industry that people say, what we're trying to do, we're implementing all the ITIL processes. No, that's not really what they're doing. They're doing implementation for a particular outcome. So we don't try to look at ITIL in that regard, but we try to make sure that people understand how they're using ITIL as a practice, or what we say, service management as a practice versus managing services. that type of perspective will come across. So when you start thinking of service management as a practice, you say, wow, all the individual contributors, those people in the restaurant or the people in the hospital, they really don't care about that at the end of the day. We try to make them aware of the repercussions as it relates to violation of process and things like that. But the hospital as an organization is has a practice and the way that they want to deliver their services and the way they want to support their services. And this is where best practices like ITIL come into play. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. It
Okay.
does.
So really, when you start thinking about that, the key takeaways is what is prescriptive versus non-prescriptive about as it relates to a practice, and then how do those things actually get executed at the end of the day.
So would ITIL suit every type of organization? Maybe you can give us an example where ITIL is not the best way to go when you need to be less prescriptive and have less organized. Is there such an example that you, in your experience, run into?
Yeah, well, ITIL really, from a real basic perspective, ITIL itself, what people need to understand, it's a practice for IT service management that supports service management. And when you think about service management is what every organization does, what if they deliver a service or product. So ITIL could fit any organization. But how do you execute against the ITIL best practices? If you have some IT components within your organization, such as a server, a cash register, or any other types of IT things, you may want to make sure that they're helping you deliver value for the services that you're delivering as an organization. So you sort of connect IT service management with service management. Now, does it apply to any type of organization? Yes, it can. And then sometimes organizations that don't use IT, they may be very small or whatever, they still may get some benefit from understanding what the practice of service management is all about. And because there's other aspects to it besides just the relationship of IT to the service outcomes. For example, the user experience and the capabilities for growing your business or running your business more effectively. Because even within ITIL, what we try to get across to people that at the end of the day, technology supports process. And what technology actually does is automate process. So you have a process that you go through. You may say, well, I'm going to do step one, step two, step three. Step three is going to be done with technology. Step four, I make a phone call. Step five, I take a piece of paper down the hall or something like that, as it relates to the process of delivering that service. And then throughout all this, I interact with other people in the organization and collaborate and so forth. But as I go through those series of activities, I don't necessarily have to have an IT component. But still, I have a series of activities for delivering that service. Now, ITIL talks about that. And if you decide to use IT, we talk about that too. Make sense?
Have you ever met customers who said, no, we don't going to use ITIL, and then have to sort of convince them that no, you're crazy not to do it? Or are there actually opportunities to sway someone in this regard?
Yes and no. And what I actually do, if I have a customer says, wow, ITIL doesn't work for us. We tried that before, and it's just not working in my organization. So please, Anthony, don't come in here and give us the ITIL speech or the religion around ITIL. I said, okay, I won't do that. So let's talk about service management. Now, underneath that, when we talk about service management, there's other best practices and other frameworks. But the one that I talk about the most is ITIL. For example, there's ITIL, or the telecommunication industry. There's Six Sigma. There's project management. There's ISO 20000. There's Lean Six Sigma. And one of the things you have to think about when you're doing service management, what's the right tool for the right outcomes? Now, if you have an organization that's dead against, having another ITIL type, approach to things, and really they probably just turned off by the term ITIL, and maybe they got their consultant or something like that, and they didn't get to the outcomes because they weren't focused correctly on what really was the constraint or the issue as relates to the outcomes that they're trying to get to. So you really need a good resource with good capabilities around service management to really help that customer. Otherwise, they do get to that point, they get turned off, and they say, well, no, ITIL's not for us. We need to try something else. Because what we did before, we spent a lot of money on, and it didn't work, and so forth. And there's a lot of anxiety in the company because we did things that way. So don't talk to us about that. So you avoid the term, but still, underneath it all, you're still talking about managing, you know, services. And one of the best ways of doing IT service management is ITIL. But you may need to use other tools and other best practices to really help that customer achieve their overall service management objectives. Okay, so you can have ITIL, that's the de facto choice without even talking about ITIL, because a lot of organizations today, they don't even realize that they're doing ITIL. They do incident management, problem management, change management. And some of them sometimes tell me, man, never heard of ITIL, but we do these things. So are they following the ITIL guidance completely? Well, nobody does. But they're probably doing it the best way that they can. And depending on what challenges they have, based on the knowledge I have, I may say, oh, well, within change management, what you really need to do is this. Because you're really just doing change approvals. You're not managing your changes. Within instant management, what you really need to think about is this, and change some of your metrics so that you can improve and things like that. So that's sort of the way it goes.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, in the changes that we see in the IT world right now, consumerization of IT, mobility. I mean, it's stopped being from a cool to have an iPhone in your pocket to you're actually a mobile worker now, and your work behavior has changed, and consumers demanding different services that we have to react to. Is ITIL adjusting to that? What's happening in the ITIL world going forward?
Yeah, really the current guidance is applicable to those things around social, mobile, and analytics and other things that's going on within our industry today. When you think about the practices, like I said, they're non-prescriptive. So what organizations go through sometimes when they're even implementing ITIL as a practice, they go through different levels of maturity. I heard a customer the other day, but besides just talking about the Gartner maturity model, some of the industry maturity models. This is the way they sort of articulated maturity as it relates to the outcomes. They said, well, we put in foundation processes and initiatives so that we can do something that we weren't able to do that effectively before. And now we want to enhance that. And then we want to go a little bit further and exploit, those changes that we're making within the organization within our overall value chain for the delivery and support of services. When you think about that, you say, okay, well, what the organization really did in the beginning, they said we want to run IT better, or we want to run the business better, utilizing IT, so that we can be more efficient and more effective and take that money and put it back into a growth strategy. Now they're back to the point that they can grow, which they called enhancing, what they're already doing, and then say, okay, well, now let's look at what we're doing from that perspective, and then the exploitation. So as you go through these different levels of maturity, what I'm also saying is that what you'll find out is that there may be other pieces of technology that you want to use, like cloud computing. Maybe now that you get your processes better, you can evolve to more of a cloud model. Or if you really need to go faster, you transform to cloud immediately and do things. And still, when you start doing cloud computing, or like we said, mobile, or any of the other new things that's out there, you still need manage the services that are using it. So cloud computing becomes more of an enabler for
Mhm.
achieving your goals within service management. Mobility becomes more of an enabler for achieving your goals again within service management, and so forth. So the ITIL value chain and the service life cycle still matters, because services have a beginning, they have an end. You still have to do change management. You have to manage incidents. You have to figure out, if there's problems that you need to manage. You might want to manage availability of those devices, overall capacity of you supporting those devices, the service level agreements, and all the other ITIL processes that come into play. But now, instead of just looking at ITIL as being prescriptive, you say, well, ITIL maybe never told me about some technology that came out today, but how do I use that technology in order to achieve my service outcomes. It's hype right now, but can I really exploit that technology so I can have a competitive advantage within the marketplace if I move a little bit quicker? Oh, yes, I can, because now if I look at the overall process and how the technology supports the process, it enables me to become more efficient, more effective, and go to market faster and so forth. Same thing with cloud. If you think about cloud, one of the driving factors is the lower cost. I don't have to manage IT. I can focus more on business outcomes and a lot of other different things. So ITIL still matters, in all those different areas.
It
Or
seemed to
the
fit.
practice of service management, which ITIL is a component of.
That makes sense. Yeah, and it seemed to fit across the board. It's how you prescribe it to your current situation. Well, that's all for this week's ALFSU. I really want to thank Anthony Orr, my guest. It was a pleasure talking to you today. And next week, we will be back with Steve Spencer, who will talk about what it's like to using a virtual agent in your self-service strategy. Until then, I'll see you later. Stay safe.